Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And more Christmas cards. If you missed my last holiday card video, I'm working on next year's stash. So I'm going to keep posting Christmas cards right up to Christmas, and then we will just see if I continue after Christmas. I've always wanted to continue doing them like throughout the year, like do, you know, 1 or 2 videos a month, but I make no promises. Because like I said in the last one, usually by the time the end of the year rolls around, I'm just done. But I send out a lot of Christmas cards to my Patreon supporters, and yeah, working towards building that stash because I sent out a whole bunch this year. So anywho, I pulled out several oldie but goodie favorites from Honeybee Stamps, specifically the Lovely Layers Poinsettia, which looks very odd just as the wafer dies, but it builds a gorgeous poinsettia. And I do have a playlist, and I'll link to it at the end of this video along with my holiday playlist. But I have a playlist of videos I've done over the last however many years using Honeybee's Lovely Layers die sets, because there's tons of them now, and they're some of my favorites. I love them, and they're so easy to assemble. So I did some spraying with spray stain and mica stain sprays, splatter, of course, hot foiling, all the things, and I made 4 cards. So if you keep watching, I will show you guys how I made those cards. So before I even started filming, I did all of my die cutting, and as I was doing my die cutting, I was like, you know, I'm going to do more than a couple cards. Let's do 4. Why not? So I die cut the poinsettia from watercolor paper, just the petals, because there's all the petals, which is what you see me kind of laying out here. And then there's a little piece for the center, and then there's a couple leaves. So for all the petal pieces, like I said, die cut from watercolor paper. And I was determined to do this all in one step. So I did a little bit of creative, adjustments to fit all these pieces. I've just got some paper towel in my splat box, and I laid out my flour sack cloth because, yeah, spraying with water. And then I'm going to use spun sugar spray stain, and then I'm going to use a couple mica stains. So the spray stain is just pure color, and this is spun sugar, so it's just a very light pink. And then the mica stains, you need to shake them very, very, very well. Make sure all that mica that sits in the bottom of these bottles is completely shaken up, otherwise you're going to clog everything. It'll be a nightmare. So I used 2 colors of the mica stain. I used Winterberry, which is a lighter pink, and then I went in with a little bit of Cocktail Party, which is a much more intense pink. And then I ended up taking them all out of the splat box, and I just put them on a big old cutting board that I keep in my craft area to literally just hold like die cuts like this so that they can dry. So I let everything dry, which I did speed up with my heat tool, and my glue was clogged. So I just poked that with a pin. We're good to go. And to put these together, super simple, especially this one. But any of the Honeybee Lovely Layers, honestly, sometimes they look more intimidating than they actually are. It's definitely one of those things where it's once you do it once, it's like, oh, it just makes sense. Really. I can't, if I can do it without having to follow any sort of guide, anyone can do it. And with this one especially, you just go largest to smallest. That's it. And it's only the 4 layers. So the largest layer, and then the second layer, and everything just fits in the 3rd layer, and then the smallest layer. And then the little centers, which I just die cut from scraps of gold glitter paper. And that's it. And it's assembled. And it's just fabulous. And there's like debossing detail and everything. That also is kind of a visual cue when assembling these, because the parts that don't have the debossing detail are always covered up by the next layer. So there's many little visual cues with all the Lovely Layers sets that as you put them together, it's like, oh, they just fit. They just fit, and the pieces make sense, and then it all comes together. So I adhered all of these while, because they're all sitting here, everything is dry. And as I adhered them, I would adhere the little centers, because I die cut everything at the same time. You know, I die cut all the watercolor paper, and I die cut the centers, and then I die cut the leaves, which I'll get to in a second. And yeah, so I sprayed all these, dried them all, assembled them all. And then for the leaves, I just die cut some scraps of Simon Says Stamp's green apple cardstock. First off, look at them. Seriously, look at the detail. They're so pretty. I will show at the end too with my flashlight, because they are sparkly, shimmery, amazing because of the mica stains. So anyway, the leaves I die cut from green apple cardstock, but then I decided I didn't want to leave them just plain. They needed a little extra. So I just pulled out my grip mat, and I just stuck these here. This is just to kind of hold everything in place. And I die cut extras of the leaves, because you get a large leaf die and a small leaf die in the set. So I die cut them all twice. So that'll have 4 leaves for each poinsettia. And then I took some Simon Positively Saturated inks. I just took one of the newer ink trios. This is the lightest shade is Cabbage, the medium shade is Artichoke, and then the darkest shade is Kale. And I'm just using my Picket Fence paper pouncers and just pouncing the lightest shade onto these. I am not worried about getting like a perfect blend. My camera doesn't like me. It makes things look worse than they really are. In real life, there are no like pounce lines, nothing. And 1, these inks do smooth out as they dry. And 2, yeah, my camera just makes everything look a little, I don't know, a little less refined. But started with the lighter ink, and then I went in with the medium shade, which was Artichoke, and just pounced it. Just added that, ink to them. No rhyme or reason, just kind of keeping like it more sort of concentrated towards the base of each leaf. And then I'd also pulled out, I just used 1 wafer die from the Lovely Layers Winter Greenery die set that I have used in many videos. I think like last year's Christmas series, I used this multiple times. And I just used a little sort of pine branch wafer die, the smaller one from that set, and I die cut it from really dark green cardstock. I think it was Hero Arts pine cardstock. And then I pounced the Kale ink onto it, which is very subtle because I was dealing with, dark greens. Added that to the other leaves as well. Set all those aside. And then for my main sentiments, I'm using the Foil Script Holiday Hotfoil plate and die set. I've also used these in previous videos. Favorites. And I chose just the Merry Christmas and the Happy Holidays plates from this. And I am working with Simon Says Stamp's Midnight Green. Yeah, I always forget the name of that one. Midnight Green cardstock. So this is dark green cardstock. A lot of times on camera, people are asking about the black cardstock, and it's like, oh, it's not black. It is just ridiculously dark green. Love it. So I've got pieces of that. And then I have my plates, and then I have gold glimmer foil from Spellbinders, and I trimmed down the foil to just slightly bigger than these sentiments. And then I've got my pieces of cardstock that I want to foil on, and you put the foil down on the cardstock with the pretty side of the foil facing up, so in this case the gold facing up, and then the pretty side of the plate facing the foil. I tape these into place with little bits of Spellbinders narrow washi tape. I already had my Glimmer hot foil machine there off to the side, turned on. The middle light was solid green. Put the plates with the foil and the cardstock onto the machine. Press the timer button. It takes about a minute for it to heat up. So let that go until the light turns solid there. And then I slowly ran this through my Platinum 6 die cut machine. And I normally say, like, do not run your hot foil plates like back and forth like this, but since mine were taped into place, they're not going to shift. And I also had a bunch of stuff behind the machine there. So I pretty much just backed it out, like rolled it back. It was fine. So, but if you find that if you run it back and forth and your plates are shifting and you're not getting as good of an impression, that's most likely why, because you're generally only supposed to run it through like one direction, just nice and slow, because the Glimmer machine provides the heat, the die cut machine provides the pressure, and that's how you get the foiled images, sentiments, whatever hot foil plates you're using. So it turned out great, which is always there's something, I don't know, I just get immense satisfaction from hot foiling, especially when it works. So it did. So I repeated the process a second time, and I just used the first pieces of foil as a little visual guide to trim a couple more pieces, trimmed a couple more pieces of cardstock, reused the little bits of tape that I already had on the little Hotfoil plates. So got those into place again. The machine was already ready to go. So got them onto the glimmer machine, pressed the timer button, put the spacer plates on there, let the timer go until that light goes solid. And then same thing, gonna run this through my Platinum 6 machine. And I, again, went back and forth because I still hadn't moved all the stuff that was behind it. So ran that through and then, yeah, pulled off the plates and I've got just, yeah, I love it. I really, really do love hot foiling. Like it's so fabulous. So once I was done all of that, I used the coordinating wafer dies to die cut these sentiments. And then off camera, I actually die cut more scraps of that midnight green cardstock. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. But die cut all the sentiments and then die cut some scraps. And I just held the wafer dies in place again with just little bits of washi tape so that those don't shift when I run them through my die cut machine. And then I also pulled out the Honeybee Inside Holiday Sentiments stamp set and more scraps of that midnight green cardstock. This time I'm using my anti-static powder tool on these pieces, and I am going to stamp one of the sentiments from that set with clear embossing ink, and then stamping that with that, and then I'm going to coat these with Simon Says Stamp's Detail Gold embossing powder. So sprinkle that over the sentiments, tap off the excess, and then stamp it another couple times, because again, making 4 cards, need 4 sentiments. So got those all stamped, coated with the embossing powder. Then I'm going to melt all of these with my heat tool till everything is smooth and melted. And this is another thing that will never get old for me. I've said this a million times, but there's something like magical about embossing powder, especially metallic embossing powder. Like as it melts, it's just like that ooh shiny, but also just like magic, you know? So melted all that. Let it cool down for a few seconds, and then I just use my microfiber cloth to wipe away that excess anti-static powder. And then all those sentiments, I just die cut them with some sentiment label dies from Simon, just to give those straight edges. And then after I had die cut them, I just took my little guillotine paper trimmer to trim off the ends of all of these just to clean them up. Because again, I'd stamped, a couple of them onto that scrap and whatever. So trim down the ends of all of these with my paper trimmer. So all these sentiments that I heat embossed are going to go onto the insides of these cards. So I've got my, I did my poinsettias with the sprays and whatnot and assembled them. I did the leaves with the inks and the pouncing, set those aside. I hot foiled sentiments for the fronts of the cards and then die cut them, and then did the sentiments for the inside. And then to, kind of frame everything up for the fronts of the cards, I used the Honeybee Spring Vine Layering Frames dies. I've used this in a previous video, and yeah, they're technically spring ones, but I just love the detail of these. Like all that debossing detail, it just gives it that extra something. So those I die cut also from that midnight green cardstock because I really, really, really love wafer dies like this and doing tone on tone. It just doesn't look like a whole lot here on camera, especially with this really dark cardstock, so you don't really see the detail. But it just, there is, that detail is there, and it just looks fabulous. And you can see it better like at the end of the video I'll show, and then in the photos and whatnot. But I had die cut them from that midnight green, and that's also why I did the sentiments in that, because I want the poinsettia to kind of pop, and then I don't want the rest of the card to be super busy, even though I'm also going to add splatter because I couldn't resist. But I figured out my placement. I had one of the panels was like off camera, and I'd figured out my placement of where I wanted to put my leaves and my little pine sprigs. So I'm going to adhere those into place with just craft tacky glue, and then I'm going to adhere the poinsettia into place also with just craft tacky glue. So once I get that all adhered, I left space for the Hotfoil sentiment, but I'm not going to adhere those till after because, like I said, I want to do splatter. So I'd also, like I mentioned, die cut scraps of using those coordinating wafer dies for the sentiments and adhered them to the back just to add a bit of dimension. So once I had all of my card fronts assembled, now I'm going to add splatter. So I'm going to put these into my splat box, and I started with white gouache, and I just added that to a little palette, added a little bit of water to thin it down to make it a little more liquidy so it splatters good. And then I've got my little fan brush, and I'm going to add white splatter to all of these card fronts right over the poinsettia, the leaves, the background, etc. And then I was just like, you know what also would look really nice is gold splatter. So I did both. You could skip it. I know some people just do not like splatter, and that's fine. That's the beauty of, you know, art and card making and being creative and all the things, is do what works for you and what you enjoy. I love me some splatter. I don't know why. I just do. I love the texture it adds, and I just get weird satisfaction out of it. So splattered all 4 card fronts with the white gouache. And then for the gold splatter, I used my Gonzai Tombi Starry Colors in gold. And I'd already added water to it, swirled that up, and then used my fan brush again to add gold splatter to all of these. And then just very carefully move them out of the splat box so that I could do the next 2 card fronts, let that dry, which didn't take very long at all. So took that out of there, put in the last 2 card fronts, and then added that bit of gold splatter to both of these as well. And then made sure, of course, to wash out my brush and all the things. So once I've got the splatter done, my card bases are also midnight green cardstock, because again, tone on tone. That's what I was going for. So, and there is something about like really dark card bases. It just makes everything like pop. So for the insides of the cards, I die cut scraps of ivory cardstock using that kind of second largest wafer die from that Spring Vine layering frames dies. It's the same one I used on the front of the cards. You just can't see it very well. But I die cut it from the ivory cardstock to give a place to write to the recipient, and then adhere to that heat embossed sentiment just right down the center of it. So that finished off the insides of the cards. And then my card fronts with all their splatter are nice and dry. So put craft tacky glue on the back of that, and then adhered that to the card base. And then I'll adhere the sentiment into place, which of course I dropped this one right onto the card front with the glue. Great job, you know, but just kind of wiped it off with my fingers, and then we're good. And then I repeated that for the other 3 cards, just the exact same process. So once everything was adhered, I of course had to add some bling, especially because a couple spots I smeared with my nice little mess with the glue. So what do? Cover it with bling, and we're good. So that's exactly what I did. And I used Honeybee's Holiday Wishes gem stickers. These are the newest ones, and I hoard these. So I get an extra pat on the back for using up a bunch of these, because just like Honeybee's pattern paper, I hoard their pattern paper and I hoard their gem stickers because I just can't help myself, and I love them, and they're shiny, and you know, inner magpie. Anyway, I adhered a bunch of them to these card fronts, just using my little die pick to peel them off, because they are stickers. They're sticky on the back. So stuck those to these cards, and that finished them off. So they are shiny, shimmery, so much detail from the embossing that the wafer dies do, which I just love. And then the Hotfoil sentiments and all the things. All the things. So yeah, you can kind of see all that detail with that tone on tone between the layering frames wafer dies and that midnight green cardstock. And then on the inside, on the ivory, it's got all that debossed detail like pressed into the cardstock, which I love it. I really love it. It's so fabulous. Like, look at all that detail, like all the veining on the poinsettia and the leaves. Oh, just perfection. So anyhow, like I mentioned in the intro, I will have a link to my Lovely Layers playlist at the end of the video in the end screen, as well as a link to my 2023 holiday card series. That playlist will also be linked at the end. And then all of the supplies I used, my blog post, etc., that will be linked directly below the video for anyone who's interested. Thank you all so much for watching, thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.